Discovery.
3, 2, 1, 0, 0. Liftoff. Americans return to space as Discovery clears the tower.
Welcome to the Podcast Discovery Show, the podcast that's about other podcasts, where every single week we have a book club style discussion about a podcast. And at the end of this episode, we're going to have a brand new recommendation. And we'll talk about that one next week. I'm Kirk.
I'm Zach.
And I'm Matt.
And this week we're talking about The Wildlife. It's a show about animals, and specifically the episode about bears with Brogan Holcombe.
And how did you find this show, Kirk?
It's just one of those ones that tangentially is connected to a lot of the other shows that we listen to and stuff. You know what I mean? Like they even mentioned Vikram in there.
Yeah, I did notice that at the end of this, that they said Vikram. I'm like, this guy is friends with everybody. The good doctor talks to everyone.
The good doctor.
But yeah, this episode specifically is all about bears. And they get into all kinds of cool stuff. They actually have a guest star on this one. Brogan Holcombe, I think is the correct pronunciation of that name. And she is, I actually looked her up, and she is at Virginia Tech, and she is very, very involved in publishing things and researching. I think that he even said it at the beginning of the episode, kind of how animals are thriving in their specific environments.
Yeah, I think the cool thing is that she's doing some studies with like cameras on the bears, like on the collar. The ones that are already collared, they're putting a camera on the bear as well as accelerometers so that they can see when it's running and, you know, how much. Basically, it's like a Fitbit for the bear. She is the way she put it, because it is probably. But I thought that was fascinating. I think they're getting a lot of really interesting information about bears when no one's around. One of the things she mentioned that I'd never even really considered is that like there's almost no evidence that like black bears hunt. You know.
Yeah, I was not expecting that because, and I mean, I don't know anything about bears. You know, I'm no kind of expert on it, but
not a bearologist.
It seems weird. Like you would think that at some point they would catch them hunting. I mean, I've seen videos of bears like grabbing fish out of the streams and stuff. You know, like I've seen that.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that they're such like prolific foragers that they think there's a chance that they just kind of stumble on stuff.
Yeah, they stumble on berries, they stumble on carrion, they stumble on Leonardo DiCaprio.
Yeah, they stumble on him hard.
Yeah.
Like real bad for him. That guy does not go outside anymore.
No.
And even though he's very, very fond of like protecting nature and like trying to do things to address climate change, he hates bears to this day. Just hates them. He's like, not bears.
Well, he went method for that, and he actually got attacked by a bear just to see what it was like.
But yeah, they actually start this episode by the first time he saw a bear in real life. And have you guys ever seen a bear, like besides at a zoo?
Really far away, but no, otherwise.
When I was little, we were in Tennessee with my family, and we had a friend that lived there. And that guy was an avid outdoorsman. And so we were going through, the Smoky Mountain National Forest. And there's wildlife everywhere. But we saw all these cars stopped. And he grabs me. I think I'm like 7, 8 years old. He grabs me. He's like, hey, Kirk, let me take you over here. And we get out of the car and we go to this where all those people are at. And he had seen what it was. And apparently my parents didn't, because they're like, yeah, go ahead, fine. And when my dad found out what it was, he was very upset.
I believe that.
There was like 3 cubs. And the thing that's stupid is like no one even knew where the mama bear was, but there was people everywhere just like, oh, look at the little baby bear. So he took me over there and he had me on his shoulders like, hey, look at the babies, see the babies. And I remember seeing baby bears, and I thought it was really cool, the little black bears. They're so cute.
I do think that is one of the main things that causes like problems is people seeing babies or just people at parks, because everything Yellowstone's like saying don't mess with the animals. They're not your friends. They will maim you if you just like go try and pet it.
And I did go to Yellowstone as a child as well, but I remember wanting to see a bear so bad, and we didn't see any. And I also saw a few when we would go to Alaska, but that would be like really far away. Like we'd be like on a boat and you could see it.
That's
really
good though,
away.
right? Isn't Alaska grizzlies?
Yeah.
I don't think you really
grizzlies.
want to see one of those anywhere near you.
No. I mean, heck, when you get off the airplane in Alaska, they have a polar bear stuffed. The thing is like as tall as my ceiling in here. They are huge. They're like ginormous. Black bears, not so much. And we actually have black bears here in Florida. I've never seen one here.
I haven't either.
I think their population's fairly low. So they're not like abundant. But you go to like Ocala and stuff like that, and there's signs and stuff being like, hey, watch out for bears.
I feel like they also have a little space here. You know, we're not super densely populated in most of the area, so there's place for them to be around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're actually smaller than I thought. Most of them, 250 pounds up to 500. 500 is pretty big.
Yeah, I could like lift that over my head.
Can you? Wow, Matt, you're so strong.
Yeah, I'm pretty strong.
But yeah, they said the biggest one they caught was 800 pounds.
Yeah,
and
that's big.
Yeah,
that's big.
That's a large animal.
Now that I might have a little trouble holding over my head.
But yeah, this entire thing is just full of like kind of cool little tidbits. They have this. They mentioned at some point Voyager's Wolf Project, which is just another thing, kind of like what Brogan is doing, but this one is specific to wolves. And what they're trying to do is just through observation, trying to better understand them and then use that understanding for conservation. I actually looked more into the host, Devin, and he also has a nonprofit entity that you can donate to. And we'll have all this stuff linked in the show notes if you'd like to help out with it. But his is called the Open Outdoors Project. And what he does, and the premise is, and I can just read you this blurb, it's not very long. Binoculars can be very expensive, but they're quite literal eye-openers and opportunity builders for learning about, observing, and appreciating the natural world. Plus, they're often a required material in wildlife-based college courses. Not having access or being able to afford them isn't the end of the world for wildlife enthusiasts and burgeoning scientists, but having a pair of binoculars certainly helps. And so what they do is they take donations so that they can give, what would be the word? Underprivileged or just people that don't have the money to buy a nice set of binoculars. He donates them. He donates binoculars to people under 18, so kids, so that they can really get involved in science and get involved in nature in a way they might not be able to otherwise. So that's kind of a cool program he has as well.
That's pretty cool.
No, that's really cool. It's really cool. Wolves are interesting. They're one of those like cornerstone or whatever, the keystone. That's it. What is it? The
keystone species?
Keystone,
keystone species.
Holding the whole ecosystem together.
Like, they shape an ecosystem. Like that's what they've dropped wolves in places that had overpopulation of animals, but then usually you end up getting overpopulations of wolves. But it's fascinating.
I thought it was interesting when Brogan brought up that wolves actually forage more than they thought originally.
Mm-hmm.
I did not know this.
Interesting.
Yeah, and that's what he mentioned this project from, is because I guess they had gotten that information from this Voyager project.
Yeah.
I actually, strangely, I didn't even put it together until just now. I saw on Reddit today that tigers will eat succulent berries and like grasses and things to help their digestion. So all animals are out there just sometimes eat plants, hanging out.
They're like me. Occasionally having a plant.
But yeah, no, I always thought that bears were a really cool animal, and it's cool to hear them kind of go into some of the really interesting things about them physically, but then also how they research these. So, and they also mention a lot of how we can be better neighbors to wild animals, because she kind of says it very directly. If you live in a rural area, you're in the woods, and that's where the animals live. So it's probably a good idea to understand generally the ways that you can interact with these animals in a good way. And they also did have a very sad story related to that. And I just wish they wouldn't have named the bear. Honestly, I wish they wouldn't have told me the name of the bear and then crushed my hopes.
At least
especially
it was
now that I watched the video of him, I like fell in love with him watching him because he's so cute.
Yeah, he's adorable.
So I've got the story up, and we'll put it in the show notes as well as an NPR story about Petals the Bear. So there was this bear in New Jersey that would walk around on his hind legs only because he had one of his paws was completely gone. It must have been from like a bear trap or something. I don't think they said what they think it was from, but it most likely was something like that. And the other one was injured as well, I believe. So he had learned to walk on just his hind legs. And in this article, there's a very long video of him just walking around. And it does look uncanny to watch a bear walk around. It looks like someone in a bear costume. But it's a very clear video. It's not like a bad, grainy video.
Yeah, it's not a Sasquatch sighting. Don't worry.
No. But in this article, it says he was first filmed in 2014 and quickly accumulated a fan following. Whenever a few months passed without a sighting, his triumphant return to the public eye would make local headlines. Several of the videos went viral, making Petals not only a local celebrity, but a national one. And it's funny because the video that they have in here was they had found him strolling around a golf course in Oak Ridge, New Jersey. So there's this great footage of him just walking around. He just kind of looks like but unfortunately, a hunter ended up killing him, and now there's no more Petals the Bear, which is sad.
Yeah, and I don't know the specific situation around, like if it was legal to hunt bears there at the time. It just sucks that Petals was the one who got it because he was a special guy.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's true or not. I mean, it was a legal hunt, but supposedly, according to this article, it says the posting reportedly said the hunter who took him down with an arrow, quote unquote, wanted him dead for nearly 3 years and bragged about the kill. That's what's stupid.
That makes it worse. He had a vendetta against Petals. He hunted him specifically.
Yeah.
I'm guessing Petals ate all his something, stole out of his trash or broke in his window and stole his cookies. I don't know.
Drink all the beer.
Man,
I don't know.
Who would see that bear and be like, I got to kill that?
I'm going to kill this idiot.
You really,
it's like
everyone listening really should watch a video of Petals the
It's
Bear.
going to make you sad, but it made us sad too. So just join the club.
It's like one of the, I saw this old picture, like I think this morning about, it was this giant sequoia tree that was like, I think they call it like the Mark Twain. And it was like 10 to 15 foot wide. And they had just cut it down. And there's like 50 people standing around it. And I'm like, that's just so sad.
No, the best part is one of those trees. They're like, this is the oldest tree that's ever lived. We know that because we cut it down and we counted the rings. It's like, wow, you guys were real stupid back then, huh?
So stupid.
It's like, couldn't have thought of a way that you didn't kill it.
But obviously we haven't learned too much because we're still doing stupid stuff like that.
No, I mean, yeah, it's judgmental and people will probably look at us in the same exact light. But
another interesting thing that they mentioned was the Growler Bear. I feel like you got to say Growler Bear, right? Because it's a grizzly and a polar bear.
Yeah, Growler Bear makes it sound like just a growly bear, like he just growls a lot. Growler Bear makes more sense.
Yeah, but they're essentially, and it happened naturally, a hybrid between the polar bear and the grizzlies. And they're saying that a lot of the reason that this is happening is because of climate change. And there was actually a lot of articles that talked about that as that being the reason, which is interesting.
Yeah, I think their ranges are combining, so the really cold range where the polar bears were is starting to have less and less food. So they've started moving south to essentially look for food, and they've started encountering grizzly bears.
So I thought that was fascinating. And I saw some pictures of them too. It's just like a extra large grizzly, which is that's even scarier.
Okay.
I never want to go to the north.
Pass.
Hard pass.
That's funny. Yeah, they briefly talked about hibernation too in an interesting way. Because he was like, what is it? Like, what's going on there? And she's just kind of like, well, they basically like eat until they get sleepy. And it's like, and then once they're sleeping,
Thanksgiving,
they go to sleep. And it was like, oh, yeah, okay.
Simple.
And it's like if they don't eat until they're sleepy, or they eat until they're kind of sleepy, they wake up and then they go eat again until they fall asleep. And I was like, huh, that makes so much sense. And also the fact that like they do things when they're hibernating, but like very minimally, like the mama bears just like giving birth and then just being like,
I'm
like
still
rolling
tired
over
of
his
those
head.
stupid baby bears.
Yeah. I was like, dang, dude, that's crazy.
But yeah, he has a really cool show. He will break into a lot of different kind of topics. He'll do kind of like Varmints or Just the Zoo of Us, where they'll get with an expert and they'll really dig into certain animals, but then they'll also just kind of have some wider ones. So if you're at all interested in I'm guessing, Kirk, have you listened to more of these, or is this your first one?
I have. I've listened to like 3 or 4.
Is a lot of it kind of research based? Does he talk to researchers about kind of how they're like studying the animals too?
A little bit. Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, it's very similar to what this episode was like.
Cool. But
or
yeah,
he talks to somebody that is working in that field or works at a zoo or, stuff like that.
Yeah. Very informative.
It's
Very
a great
informative
show
podcast.
about animals.
Brap.
And I have a show that I bet a lot of people have listened to, but I haven't listened to as much as I wanted to. So I checked one out, and it was a very interesting one. It's an NPR show called Invisibilia. And the episode I want to talk about is called The Great Narrative Escape, that talks about slow TV and how we all consume different things based on narrative and a lot of things like that. It's an NPR show, so they get really in depth on it, and it's really a fun time.
Slow TV. I think that Paul Chomo told me about that.
He might have. I do remember it becoming a thing. Everybody was watching videos of a train driving all the way across the country, and it's like 8 hours of just a train driving.
I guess we'll learn more about it next.
They
next
get into
episode.
that and a lot more, and we will get into that next week.
I feel like that's the one kind of YouTube channel that I could make. Just driving around
record
town.
a train. No, there's a guy who talks about that too. There's a guy who I won't spoil it.
Okay,
we'll talk about it next week. And remember,
there's always more to discover.
Matt, you want to do it too?
There's always more to discover.
This was a podcast from the Podfix Network. You can check out more shows like it at podfixnetwork.com.